my name is Rachel, and if you're new around here, I just share parts of my story with chronic illness in hopes that I can help somebody out there struggling with similar things. So today I want to share a little bit about my experience with the medication called Propranolol for a condition that I have called POTS, which stands for Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia syndrome. And POTS is a form of dysautonomia. It's a common condition. It often causes symptoms like dizziness, a rapid heart rate upon sitting up or standing, inability to exercise or difficulty exercising, headaches, fatigue, nausea, the list goes on. It's not a fun condition to live with, and it can really range from mild to very severe. So some people with POTS are very high functioning and they're able to, work normal jobs and exercise and all sorts of things. And some people with very severe POTS are completely disabled and may not even be able to sit up or stand up at all without fainting or having really severe symptoms. So it's different in every patient. For me, I have been having POTS symptoms for almost 5 years now, and I was diagnosed a little bit over 4 years ago. And so actually I was one of the lucky ones who was diagnosed only a couple months after having symptoms, but for a lot of people it takes quite a while to be diagnosed with POTS. There are all sorts of different treatments for POTS, but there is no one standard course of treatment. So it really just depends on the patient, on the cause of POTS, and on the specific symptoms that you're having. So I'm editing this video and I realized that I didn't mention that propranolol is a type of beta blocker, and the main reason that it is used to treat POTS patients is because it lowers heart rate. And for people with POTS, we often have very high heart rates upon standing, and that causes a lot of bad symptoms. So sometimes propranolol can lower that heart rate when you're standing enough to make your symptoms decrease. And so it does work really well for a lot of POTS patients, and I'm one of those patients that has had a good experience with it. The one downside is that because it's a beta blocker, it can lower your blood pressure. It is one of the beta blockers that doesn't always lower blood pressure. It's not, it's not primarily meant to lower blood pressure, but for some people it does. And so that's something that, you would have to monitor and make sure your blood pressure doesn't get too low on it. So now I'll get into my experience with propranolol. My experience is just one, and just because propranolol has helped me doesn't mean that it's going to help you. I'm just going to be sharing my experience with it. So when I was first diagnosed with POTS, I did a lot of research on it, and I started doing all the basic conservative treatments like drinking a lot of water, adding a lot of salt to my diet, compression stockings, those sorts of things. But for me, it really didn't make a difference in my symptoms, and I was still very debilitated and limited by my symptoms. And through my research, I found a medication called Propranolol that was found to be very effective in a large group of POTS patients in helping to manage their symptoms. And from what I read from the Vanderbilt Dysautonomia Center for Research was that typically POTS patients do better with a low dose of propranolol versus a higher dose. And propranolol is used for a lot of different conditions, one of the big ones also being migraines. And so doctors often will prescribe propranolol for migraines in kind of higher doses, like maybe 60 milligrams a day or even 120 milligrams. They found that people with POTS did better with something like 10 milligrams 2 times a day or 3 times a day or 20 milligrams twice a day. That was actually better in helping manage symptoms in comparison to patients taking a larger dose. I'm sure there are patients that do better with the higher dose than the lower dose, but this is just based on the research that I've found, and I can post the links down below to some of the research studies I have found for propranolol and POTS. So I'm personally very sensitive to medications, and throughout my chronic illness journey I have tried probably dozens of different types of medications for various issues and conditions, including POTS, but also some other conditions that I have been dealing with. And over the almost 5 years that I have been sick, I now only have, I think it's 2 prescription medications that I take consistently aside from my Lyme disease treatment. Those 2 for me are propranolol and LDN, which stands for low dose naltrexone, and I have a video on my experience with that as well. So for me, I started with 10 milligrams of propranolol, and I noticed the difference in my symptoms almost immediately. Like within an hour or 2 of taking it, I had lower heart rates standing. I was feeling less dizzy when walking. After the first few days of taking it, I really saw a big improvement in my POTS symptoms. And at the time when I started taking propranolol, I actually was able to get back to exercising. Prior to becoming sick, I was a rock climber, and so I was able to get back to climbing. I was still feeling sick. I wasn't able to climb to the intensity that I was before getting sick, but I was actually able to do it, which was something that I wasn't able to do before taking propranolol, which was really amazing. I would describe it as like a functional person that feels sick all the time. So like, I was able to work and exercise and go out with friends and even travel, but it was really, really hard for me, if that makes sense. So I was still having dizziness, I was still having the tachycardia and the severe headaches and symptoms, that I was able to push through them and exercise for a few months, which was awesome. It was such a blessing. Unfortunately, a few months after starting propranolol, my health started to decline again. I started having more neurological issues and pain and debilitating symptoms that unfortunately made it so I wasn't able to rock climb or hike and do the things that I wanted to be doing. I continued to take propranolol. I always notice, even to this day, I always notice if I accidentally forget to take it. It helps my heart rate to not be like through the roof when I'm just doing things like walking around the house. I would say that my POTS is unfortunately not anywhere near being under control, but propranolol has definitely been, for me, the most helpful treatment for POTS that I have tried. So I'm definitely thankful for that. I'm not able to take any higher doses of propranolol because my blood pressure is so low, so it wouldn't be safe for me to be taking any more. But overall, it's been a really good treatment for POTS for me. As far as side effects go, in the beginning when I started taking it, I had a lot of trouble sleeping, and that is actually one of the most common side effects of propranolol is difficulty sleeping. I think it kind of interferes with your body's production of melatonin. And so after that, I started taking melatonin supplements and have been taking those every night since, and that helps some. I definitely still continue to struggle with sleep, but at this point, I don't think it's related to the propranolol. Thankfully, there really aren't any other side effects that I have noticed from taking propranolol. So for me, it's been a really good treatment for POTS. Actually, in my case, I had done the research about propranolol and asked my dysautonomia doctor at the time if I could try propranolol, and she thought that it would be a good idea. So she went ahead and prescribed it, and it really ended up helping. So that was really great, but of course every case is different, so if possible, try to see a dysautonomia specialist so they can help figure out what the best treatment plan is for POTS for you. Thanks for watching. I hope that this was helpful for you. If you'd like to continue following along on my journey with chronic illness, then be sure to click subscribe, and I will look forward to seeing you guys next time.